What's up, guys? My name is Tim Roswick, and today I wanted to talk about a concept called pick up and play. And it's a concept called pick up and play because that's what I decided to call it. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, I do a lot of feedback videos. I do feedback Fridays every week so far, and I've played hundreds of indie games. And usually what I've observed, at least from Game Dev Underground standpoint, is that we have a lot of newer developers. We have a lot of developers that want to get in this as a hobby. We have a lot of developers that are just getting into game design. And some of the commonality between a lot of these games is that they try and drop you in the game, but they don't tell you a whole lot about anything. And that seems to be a common mistake that comes up. Maybe I should add it to my mistake list because that mistake list is getting long. But I think if you look at some of the games that I've played especially over the last 2 months, we just got done with Feedback Friday number 7, and each Feedback Friday maybe has between 20 and 30 games. So if you do the math, 200 some games or something like that, right around there. But a lot of the games that I end up spending a lot of time with are games that I can pick up and play. Games that when I sit down, the controls are either intuitive enough or the game is simple enough for me to play right away. And I've noticed that, like, when I start a game, if I don't know what to do, where to go, or I can't figure out the controls, it kind of starts this chain reaction of frustration for me. And I don't know if this represents the player base, but this is just me personally, so take this, with a grain of salt. But for me, like, okay, I can't figure it out, so I have to spend time figuring it out. So then I spend time figuring it out. I use a lot of mental effort to, like, okay, it does this, whatever. I got to figure this out. I got to do this. And then I play the game. And then usually if I've had to figure out the controls, usually that means they're not intuitive or they weren't listed anywhere. So that's bad already, right? Those are mistakes on their own. But then I've noticed that frustration kind of keeps ticking in on me, and maybe I have a little less enjoyment with the game. And as I kind of go on and on and on, my patience or my my love for the game, I guess, just kind of keeps on that track of, like, just getting picked away at, like, with little things. So what I've noticed is, like, on the other side, the games that I can pick up and play, the games that have controls that are intuitive, the games that have clear objectives, the games that I can start, like, instantly, even if they get more complex later, I'm much more likely to play for a longer period of time. And you can see this. You can actually see this if you go over the last couple Feedback Friday videos that I have, because I usually try and spend 5 to 10 minutes on each game, give like a first impression, give some basic feedback on stuff. But there are some games that I end up playing for 20, 30 minutes. And I don't do that intentionally. I just, like, get sucked in. And some games do this really, really well, where they just kind of drop you in and they give you the basic controls. And then all of the complexity or the depth comes in later, or it's discovered as you move on. And I feel like that's a really, really good way to capture a player's attention, because let's say your game has all these cool moves, right? It's a fighting game and you got a dash, a kick, a jump, all this stuff. And if it has to be somewhat complex to make it fun, right? Because, like, if you have a fighting game and all you can do is jump, that's not fun. If all you can do is jump and punch, that's not fun either. You have to have some complexity there. You have to have some depth to kind of learn all the moves. But the more complexity you have, the harder it is to teach a player how to play it. So by removing some of that complexity up front and allowing them to just jump in, maybe with just a jump or just a punch or something like that, and just say, oh, just jump in, just punch this thing. And then you go, hey, kick this thing. Starting with the pick up and play aspect, I think is really important. And I have a video on like a hidden tutorial, and it's similar to this concept, but this concept is more about game mechanics and systems. A hidden tutorial is more about curated experiences to teach a player over time. The concept that I'm talking about here, if your game is like pick up and play, if you can just hand it to someone and they can start playing, I think it's a retention tool. I think it can improve your game to a point where more and more people will play it longer and longer periods of time. This is my hypothesis based on how I interact with games. So I could be completely wrong. But I know that the games that I spend the most time with are the games that tend to hook me in the first 10 or 20 seconds. And I feel personally like this is a human thing, because I know a lot of people, like there's been studies in psychology about the first impressions with people, right? Like your first 10 seconds of meeting someone, you put them in a box, you kind of formulate what you think about them, you lump them with these other people that you've met before. And it's really hard to break through that after you've been categorized by somebody. And it's not to say that we're judgmental people, but humans work on patterns. That's the only way our brain can function. We have to lump stuff into patterns. And when you meet someone for the first time, the first 10 seconds of interaction, probably the first 5, with your body language, with your tone of voice, with the way that you interact with them, all of that stuff kind of feeds into one little part in your brain, and then you say, okay, I like this person, I don't like this person, whatever it is. You can fight that, but it's really hard. And I think games are the same way. When my first 10 seconds or 20 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes is frustrating, or I can't find the controls, or I can't figure out the objective, it's not pick up and play, I tend to like the game less. And I've noticed this with all of the games that I play. And I've noticed this objectively watching through some of the replays from the Feedback Friday stream. Because I can tell, watching myself, which this, by the way, is very helpful too, and kind of being objective and understanding yourself and being aware of yourself. Watching myself on video do the things that I do, it kind of gives me a third-person view into how I'm reacting. And I can tell some games I just have more fun with. Some games I don't have fun. But how do I articulate that? Like my objective with the Feedback Friday is not to like have fun playing games, although that's a good part of it. It's to give feedback to players. But I end up playing some games more. Even though I literally sit down and I say I want to be fair and I want to completely, give everybody the same kind of playtime and like really treat their games fair. I don't want to give this person extra benefits than this person, and so on and so forth. But I just end up doing it. So it's some kind of feeling, it's some kind of emotional attachment that I have to games that I think are easier to pick up. And I've played some games that are simple to pick up, but they get complex as the game moves on. And the way that you do this, like a tutorial can be a perfect way to do this, but like an intro sequence, but also like, maybe only having one enemy at first or 2 enemies. And then you add in additional enemies. It could be with enemy types. It doesn't have to be with numbered enemies. It could be with all kinds of different things. So from my observations, to summarize this kind of whole thing, I think games that are pick up and play can have a longer term positive impact on player retention. And I think that more complex games, if they can be made simple, even if it's for a short period of time, I think that is a really good way to kind of get someone through your door. And I guess a perfect example of this would be World of Warcraft. Like, when you start that game, the UI and the control scheme and all that is nothing like what you watch Twitch streamers, play in expert mode with all the crazy windows and shit. And it's like that for a reason, because the complexity scares people away. It's hard to understand. It's too much to take in. It's a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to stop blabbering about it. But that was just something I observed watching the Feedback Friday streams, watching myself and the kind of time I spent on games. And I realized like the games that are pick up and play, they tend to be the games that I tend for. They could be because I'm a more casual audience. But I've noticed this like in psychology and stuff as well. So I hope you guys found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment down below. What do you think of pick up and play games? Do you think this is applicable to all games, or do you think it's only for casual games, only for casual audiences? Do you think complex games can be made simple up front? Let me know your thoughts down below. Once again, my name is Tim Ruswick, and I'll see you again tomorrow.